Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate and inspire romanticism through passionate people doing incredible things. Hi, I'm grateful for this year. Hi, I'm Trey, and I am equally as grateful for the host of this podcast, Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hello. Hello, grateful for this year. Nice to meet you.
Uh, that is met with the energy of like, hi, insert name, I'm dad.
That was it. Yeah, I was going for the dad joke.
Yes.
I'm grateful for this year too. I can't believe that we are saying that we are wrapping up year number 3. What is that?
What is this? Like 3 years going on our fourth.
Yeah, what?
So,
How long have you been doing this? What?
well, they say that podcasts normally die out around like the second year. Just people move on to other projects, they take on too
Mhm.
many other things. So for us to have made it 3 years going into our fourth year, like, is that not incredible?
It has been a longer road than probably most people expect, but I'm so glad to be on it. And yeah, you're right. Most podcasts, most 90, something like 90% don't make it past episode 3, and so here we are,
Yeah.
still here. And I don't know. I feel like we're just so fortunate and so lucky, and I'm here for it though.
We would not be here without, like, I would not be here without you. And we collectively would not be here without our incredible producer, Sandra. We would also not be here without our incredible moderator, Josh. And certainly not without our incredible audience. So, to you all, before we dive into tonight's discussion, we want to make sure that we welcome you all. If this is your first episode, hello and welcome. And if this is your 100th episode, hello and welcome. But we want to welcome you in style with a lovely welcome from a recent guest, Kate.
Vulture. And in Irish, you pour out a welcome for someone. I love the idea that you pour out a welcome. That the vulture and the you pour out a welcome before them, and so it's almost like the welcome mat is there. And so yes, I think, come on in. You belong, like right away, right away. No bar to entry. Nothing needs to change about you. You don't have to be different. Just come on in. We're glad to see you. That's how I want to be. That's what I'm practicing. And it's worth practicing, I think.
That is how it
100.
should be.
I gotta say, listening to Kate, just the passion behind everything that she talks about is with such like openness and just inviting literally anybody who is in her presence into her space is, yeah, that's really inspiring.
She was such a delightful guest, and I found myself in that clip being there all over again, and that was, yeah. I want to go watch that whole episode all over again now. Kate, we miss you. Please come back to the show.
Please. Uh, but the message and the reason why we play that is exactly what we said. We want to welcome you all. We want to emulate that and make sure that you feel as welcome as we have by some of the incredible guests that we've had this year, um, and make sure that you've also got a space here with us. Um, I I have been blown away by the guests that we've had, and we were going over the list of episodes from this past year,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the names and some of the conversations that we've had have been incredible. So Emily suggested that we go through some of our episodes and talk about something we either learned, or that something that we are thankful for from that episode. Uh,
Yeah, or something that stood out. Like, we have so many great moments.
yeah,
There's an amazing moment in like every episode. And I feel like sometimes we've talked about them afterward many times, and it's like sometimes it's different for both of us. And sometimes it's it'll be like Josh or Sandra who has the moment in the episode. So I don't know. We could start at the top if you want. Our first episode of 2024. I almost said 2014. What's wrong with me? 2024 was Bob Shields, who is. I missed that episode. I was not, and I don't remember why.
I think you were teaching a class that day.
Oh, right.
So it was right at the beginning of the year. What struck me about that conversation is that Bob had recognized that there was a need to have a collective space for a lot of creators. And so getting to sit down and talk with him, the what I took away from that is if you believe in something hard enough and you're willing to fight for it, you can really make magic happen and give people a space that they previously didn't have, resources they didn't have, a space to grow their own sense of artistry and their own sense of really just trying to turn it into a full business, and make that space available for people who may not have the resources with which to do it. So, Bob, if I did not say that enough on the episode, I'm very proud of you.
Yeah, and for anybody who's listening, Bob runs. What's the word? He started the Twisted Artists Guild, which I believe is out of Charlotte, North Carolina. But he has a website that's national, and you can go check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he opened up this conversation about AI that I don't like to get into on our show because we have some feelings about it, right? And it's something that I didn't think we needed to discuss. This is romanticism. So didn't need to talk about AI, but it is a reality that we face as artists and creators and dreamers, because it kind of strips away some reality for us. And so I liked the Bob Shields episode because it allowed for some conversation to happen about AI that maybe is useful to artists and could make our lives better as artists versus it being the big bad thing that artists face right now, which is that AI many times steals from artists to create itself. And AI can be used for good, and opening up that part of the conversation I thought was useful. So anyway, we won't get further into AI, but I at least wanted to mention that because that was something that I was a little more closed-minded about, and he allowed my mind to open on that to some degree.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
So our second guest was Angelica Hyde, who is a fine art photographer from London. And if you recall from that episode, Lucy's a friend of mine, and that was kind of a neat episode because she's part of the reason that I wanted modern romantic to be a thing. Way back at the beginning, she's this amazing photographer that posts mostly on Instagram, and she has quite a following, but she also does amazing art. She's so good. She's a photographer that gets a model and a dress and a location, and it's otherworldly. And it was something that she wasn't getting recognized for.
Some of the things, like some of the pictures that I saw from her Instagram, I see where you and she connected on that, because there's a picture that's still on her website right now of this girl riding a horse.
Oh yeah.
In the wind, and there are such vivid memories of doing that photo shoot out in the field with the horse, and just watching Danielle ride that horse along there.
Mm-hmm.
That it parallels for me.
Yeah, we have a very similar, well, maybe not aesthetic. Some things differ, but generally we have a similar taste. And so yeah, we definitely connected. And actually, she went to the Royal Ballet and Opera costume sale in London. I don't know, 2 months ago now, maybe.
Yeah.
And shipped me some pieces.
What?
I
What?
have a really cool cloak and a really cool dress with like the most amazing cartridge pleating that I didn't think they would do for a theater costume, and they totally did. And I get to see like the craftsmanship, and it's like they were mostly pieces from Othello.
Mhm.
And it's cool because the labels in each one, it says which actor wore it, and very cool. And then the other piece was a piece I gave to Josh as an early Christmas gift, and it's two pieces of armor that were worn. So one's like a gorget neck piece. Oop.
Yeah.
Here's me tipping my mic over. A gorget, like a neck piece, and then like a chest plate. And they're actually made, they're not made of metal, but they look like metal. In fact, when she sent me pictures, I thought they were metal, but they're actually leather and, or faux leather. I assume it's real leather, but wow, they are so well made. They look really cool. And I can't wait to use them in my own photography. And it's just
Dang.
cool to have this awesome piece of history.
Okay, how much is a plane ticket to this place? And when can I go shopping there as well?
I don't know. I guess we have to wait for their next costume sale. But I think it'd be worth going. It sounded amazing. She showed me pictures of the whole room full of racks upon racks upon racks of costumes, and it just sounded incredible. Like a dream.
Just FYI, if you are planning on going to the UK, there will be a new travel thing that's in
Oh,
place, so you do have to apply. It takes about 3 business days to get applied or fully approved for that. So just FYI, you will need to do that specifically for the UK. The rest
oh.
of the European Union is talking about something similar, but nothing formal has been in place as of this recording.
So your last minute trip idea to jet off to London, it has to be more premeditated.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
But it is good for 2 years. So once you've done
Oh,
that, it is good for 2 years.
oh, well, I'll just do it now, and then I can have a last minute. As if we do this, as if we have any kind of budget for this.
Emily, I think we need to do this episode in London. Okay. Whee!
Yeah, right. We'll just right in the middle of the episode. This is live from the airport, live from customs. They'll love that.
Live from Big Ben.
Oh, that would be cool.
Honestly, yeah.
And then I'm sorry, I didn't want to frolic all over your take on that. Are you ready to move on?
Yeah. Let's talk about Wendy.
Yeah, you go.
I'm I'm gonna say this about so many of our guests, but truly what a cool human being. Like I I'm still trying to fathom some of the things that she builds and the way that she goes about building them. Um, I am truly stunned because I don't have a lot of working knowledge what it means to be a sculptor, um, and to watch the things that have been created by her hand. I am still very much in awe at at the things that she creates.
I love that she has she takes like eccentric and quirky in a all of the good things about being eccentric and quirky and makes it like her daily life. This is her daily creativity, and it's totally normal and it's fine. And that's just her, but in all the best ways. And like, oh yeah, this creature is just this. And meanwhile, our jaws are dropped and we're drooling because of how cool she was and how amazing and whimsical and delightful. And I loved chatting with Wendy. It was that she's amazing.
There's such a lifelike quality to it, to her pieces. Like the one that she did of the pangolin, in particular, I think stands out to me. That one is so cool. But there's one of an iguana that the longer that you look at it, you can see some beading on the tail. You can see like, but then you can also see the way that the skin is molded looks like it's actually turning slightly, and so it gives it that realistic quality while giving that whimsical.
And to be clear for our audience, Wendy's a leather sculptor, and a mixed media artist. And Wendy Ellertson is her name. So if you want to look her up, Look for Wendy Ellertson. And then we have Shanda Sawyer, who has a remarkable name considering our producer Sandra Sawyer and Shanda Sawyer. And I loved that their names are so similar. Anyway, Shanda, not Sandra, Shanda is a dancer, choreographer, and director, and she had some amazing stories and some really cool experience. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
She told the story about her. I think it was her sister telling her about how she taking pictures of her when she would be dancing and how she looked awkward and she'd have her arm in this weird, whatever position. And so she said a line that really stuck with me, and that was she worked at it and really paid attention to these things. And now she gets to say, now my arms are like poetry. And I thought that was so cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Like hard work paid off. And she is right. Just watching her gesture during the episode, she was like, her arms were poetry. She's totally right. It wasn't even like a brag. It was just, she was there.
Up next, we had Abby Graves, who came to us. What stuck out to me about Abby is that she really dives into a project like super head first. And it was that she is not only an artist herself, but she looks to help out other artists. She was talking about, oh yeah, like before the podcast had even started, she was talking about, oh yeah, I've got this episode to edit, this episode to edit, this episode to edit. I've got to go film for my own content. And just, I mean, it was clear that she had her mind set on so many things, but also making herself available for other projects. And so it was always this influx of never the same podcast and never getting stuck into something. She was always willing to find what makes that story unique and then run with that, because once she saw the vision, boom, that's all she needed. She needs to see the vision, and otherwise she's got your support.
And she's kind of a creative in every aspect. She's creative in other areas of her life too. So it was like everything she does kind of has her own touch to it, whether she's cooking or she's doing art somehow, in addition to her podcast career. So I thought that was neat that she sort of just dives in with that mindset to everything.
It has been a second, but I want to say that we also had spied in the background of that conversation a few different like hobby things. Like we had seen a sewing machine, if I'm not mistaken. Then we also saw her photography equipment. We also saw her recording equipment. And so yeah.
And she has a whole blog on her website for cooking. It's like her Midwest kitchen or something like that. Anyway, she's the small town tourist. If you want to look her up, go read her blog. Check her out. She also took one of my glass fusion classes recently. So it was really fun to see her again. That was really neat. Actually, for the first time, because I hadn't met her in person before.
What? I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know her. we had like, I discovered her and sent her an email. That's how I found her. But really, it was like, we live in the same area. And so I was like, hey, if you're ever, and she signed up for one of my classes. I don't know if she realized I taught it, but she did. So she shows up and I immediately recognize her, and she's tall. not that was really a surprise, but like something I noticed. Anyway, yeah, it was really fun. And I felt like during the class, maybe I monopolized a little bit of it chatting with her because, we already felt like we knew each other, which was cool. Yeah.
What just super cool person. Our next guest that we had, I mean, we got to say, like, if we didn't make this perfectly clear, we had never received a PR box before of stuff.
Not before this. Yeah, you're right.
Not before this. This next guest sent us a box of chocolate. And it's not just any chocolate.
Oh,
Oh, it was oh
it was
speci-
divine.
that is such a great word to use for this. Uh had and it I don't want to glorify like getting a PR box, but it was some of the most incredible chocolate that I think that I've had. And wanted to do a taste testing with us on the episode itself. And so he said, try out a few things, but really, I want to get your live reactions on the
Hmm.
episode. Uh, and that was Constantine. Um, like, what an incredible human. Before we talk about something, I want to say how incredibly witty this person is. And there's a great moment from the episode that we have queued up. Before we talk about this episode a little bit more, I want to listen to that. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna play it. You
Great
ready?
thing
yeah.
to put cayenne pepper
go.
into chocolate.
What does that? How would you describe what that does?
In the quantity that I used just now, it's causing a significant amount of throat pain, actually. So if you enjoy throat pain and you're thinking, gee, what could I eat in any combination that would cause me such distress? And also the watering eyes, maybe you like that. Maybe it's a scene or something you're trying to play and you're like, wow, I wish I could cry on demand. Here you go, man. Throw a little cayenne pepper
This is
in your hot chocolate and try to keep it straight on a podcast. Because you're a master chocolatier.
Okay.
Woo! But
Um,
anyway, yes, cayenne.
That's the best. It's one of my favorite clips of the whole year. Constantine was, he was delightful in so many ways, and that was unexpected. But he played it so well, and like I love that he was just real with us.
The other thing is that in our conversations, something that's recurring has been that I love it when artists do not gatekeep their information, or whenever there's this thing that they want to do and they can teach other people how to do it because
Yeah.
there's space enough for other people, would be teaching people on various different social media platforms to do this thing, would teach
Mhm.
them how to make certain things, specifically with chocolate, but would help people make this thing. And it kind of removed a lot of those barriers between what people perceived as being this difficult task and said, oh, I can make this delicious cup of hot cocoa. I can make this bar of chocolate. And then also decided to experiment and make this heart-shaped piece of chocolate with freeze-dried strawberries in the middle of it. That was one of the most delicious things that I've ever had. It was apparently a pain in the butt to make, but it was so, so good.
Mm-hmm. Everything he sent was an experience, and thank you again, Constantine, for that. If you want to look him up, Constantine Zigo is his name. I'm going to spell it for our listening audience. It's Konstantin. That's Constantine. And Zigo, Zsigo. And you can, I think it's just ConstantineZigo.com is his website. And if you order chocolate from him, you will not be disappointed. I promise.
Go order his stuff, please. Go order it.
And then we had Lori Balton, who is a location scouting manager. And go ahead. I'm sorry. You were about.
No, I was reminiscing. You go ahead.
There was something about her that I feel was the thing about her that stood out to me the most was her a level of gratitude. It was refreshing, and it was. She has a myriad of experience in location scouting for film. She's been to so many different places in so many different ways and experienced parts of the world that we will never see. And hearing her express gratitude for her ability to do that and her accomplishments are huge, and yet she is humble, and I love that about her.
She told a few stories of places that she got to see, like for movies that she was scouting for and other projects, of places that you and I will never get to see.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was just her doing some scouting, she was able to get into some of these very remote places or less traveled by places. And that I think is incredible. There are things that we think about when it comes to making a movie or doing a television shoot for something. And then we kind of forget that you kind of have to scout for the location first. And so to be the person that's there first and then everyone else comes, I think that's also kind of special.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Who do we have next, Emily?
We have our good friends Jasmine LaFleur and Carlos Williams from Black Fayday. It was a return episode, which we haven't done too many of. And they came back to talk where they were and D&D. We talked a lot about D&D.
We really did.
Mm-hmm. It was wonderful.
It is always a pleasure to have Jasmine. If you do not follow her already, Jasmine is one of the founders of Black Fayday. You can check out more information from her, but she as just a general human is incredible. Anytime that she and Carlos are on the show are just fun. I also love that we got to have them for our reading of the Midsummer Night's Dream and have them play Titania and Oberon, respectively.
Oh, they were so brilliant.
They were so good.
It was so good. Yeah, we love them. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Then we have Tomoko Kashiwagi, who is an orchestra director from Arkansas. And wow, she was really great. In fact, she inspired us to potentially use students for our. We talked about using students for our theme song, and giving the students the opportunity to have their music heard as like switching up our theme song every week or something. And so we're still working on that, but I thought that was kind of neat. She talked about finding a teacher who believes in you and understands what you want and how important that is. And we have a clip that'll play later, but she has a clip. There's a little bit she talked about how she's made mistakes. Like we all make mistakes creating art. And in music, you make a mistake and like that's it. You can't necessarily redo it like you can some art. Like that's just it. You made the mistake. And she said she hoped, I'm going to butcher this, but she hoped that she makes beautiful mistakes. And I thought that was really cool.
There's that thing that I've been saying recently, but she, I think, said it very succinctly, is something to the effect of, I'm no longer seeking perfection, I'm seeking excellence.
Yes. Yeah, that was something we heard a couple times this year as well. And that was that's super valuable and hard learned.
Yes. The next guest that we had, Desiree Pesta. The thing that I took away from that is the fact that we got a follow-up from that episode about a certain somebody that she wound up having a connection with or made a.
Yes, it was a long time. This guy had originally, when she knew him in school, had made fun of her for making something of her own to wear. And he made fun of her, and she remembered that. And just like we remember any bully from school, she remembered him. And later, now in life, then they ran into each other, and she went out on a date with him.
Which I want to say that exchange and that like plot line after that episode, and then finding out that she went on a date with this gentleman, it was just so much fun to be able to be part of that. we weren't actually on the date with them. Let me just like say that up front. We were not on the date with them, but
No
just
one's asked us to do that yet.
no. We are available if you would like us to be
Right.
there.
Just send an email to come on my date with me at themodroom.com. No, I'm just kidding. That does not exist.
Please email your date requests too. But we're but I mean,
I love that.
I don't just someone who is so down to earth.
Mhm.
I think there's this perception of artists being a certain particular way or holding themselves in a very particular way, but I think Desiree was one of those that is just she is who she is, and she
Oh,
is
yeah.
just presents herself that way, and I think she destroys that stereotype in spades.
Yeah. She's super creative and like really smart too. I really enjoyed our chat with her.
Yeah.
And that's Desiree Pesta, the costume designer. And then we had the great fortune of interviewing, or I say interviewing, but it's really we chat. We don't interview. But we chatted with the third place winner of Blown Away season 2, I think, Alexander Rosenberg. Blown Away is the show on Netflix for the glass blowers. And
And it
I was
also,
so excited. I'm sorry.
oh, I was going to say it also describes how I felt getting to speak with him.
Blown Away, not third place, right?
Yes.
I figured so. I felt so third place that episode. I was excited to talk to him because I love glass, and he works with glass, so it was really neat to talk to him about his journey and technique and stuff.
And but again, that same thing of not gatekeeping, because he would invite people into the glass space for them to watch, for them to ask questions of him, and not hide anything from people.
Yeah, really, really great guy too.
Yes.
And then in that same thread of glass, we had like this month of glass kind of thing where we also had Leslie Pike, who is a glass engraver from the UK. Also, such a delight to have on the show. In fact, she has inspired me to change a little bit of how I work with glass, which I need to maybe email her and tell her about.
Oh, okay. It seems like you and I have some things to talk about after the podcast.
Well, I haven't finalized anything yet, but I've decided to maybe try some engraving. But also, it's about how you engrave too, because she does several different ways, and I need to figure out some of the ways that work best for me, and I'm working on that still. But it doesn't make sense for me not to the kind of the directions I want to go. So very excited. Leslie was so inspirational for me.
For those who are listening only to this podcast, you cannot see the intense facial expressions that Emily was just giving me. So once you're done listening to this, please go back to the 35-minute mark and just watch the eyebrows raise quite a bit and the eyes. It's great.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that. And then we had Yulene Kwong, whose name I butchered immediately at the beginning of the show, and I feel terrible ever since then. But I pronounced it correctly this time. She is a writer and director. She wrote a book that's on my shelf right now, which was How to End a Love Story. And she was delightful to chat with as well.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking about her journey. Also humble. She also had this humility to her, but she was just very real and very open to share, like you said, didn't gatekeep anything, and that was refreshing as well.
Up next, we had actor Scott Hamm. And I think that's the first time that we have really talked to somebody right before the launch of a film. Like it was coming out either the day after or that week.
It was the next day. Yeah.
Yes.
That was really cool.
Yeah. I liked him. There's so much enthusiasm when it comes to the different theatrical just ventures that somebody can have. So getting to hear how passionate he was about his projects, especially about the movie that was coming out, it was a really nice insight into the movie making process.
Yeah, Scott has this interesting balance of like gratitude and joy that stood out to me. Like there's something about him that made him really like you just want to chat with him more. And he really had a lot of gratitude for the support he got along the way to get as far as he did. But the fact that he was the whole episode, he was kind of joyful, really stood out to me.
Agreed. There are people that may get turned away from acting or from the theater, and he is one of those. Nope. If he gets a no, he is going to keep going.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a clip later about for him too that where he talks about his mom. And that was something we talked about. If you remember, we say Scott Ham. That's his name, but his full name is Scott Ham Duenas. And on IMDb, I think he's Scott Duenas. But he was going to just be Scott Ham, but he talked about how his mom, her last name is Duenas, and how his mom supported him so much. He wanted to keep the name as like to honor her. And I thought that was incredible. That was really incredible. And so we wanted to keep that name, help him do that. So when we published the podcast, we included that last name as well. So yeah, you'll hear from him on this in his clip later too. And then we had Dr. Diane Howard, which mind blowing. She was so amazing. Your reaction, if for our listening audience, you should have seen Trey's reaction. He's like kind of the speechless hand gestures.
Yeah.
If you can imagine what those would be for Trey.
Me? Shut up? When?
Since when do you gesture use any since when do you emote?
Never.
We're not dramatic around here.
No, not at all. But again, somebody that I think knows there's being grateful for the experience that you can have, but then there's also that time when you work for things and you realize how far that you've come. And I think that Diane was a really good representation of knowing how far that she's come, but still grateful for the opportunities that she's had up to that point.
And there are a few I feel like when I introduce somebody, I always look at like what did they say they are, and we have so many multifaceted people on the show with so many talents. They say like, oh yeah, I'm a writer, director, producer, blah 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 blah. And like I try to pick like 3 or maybe 4 if I feel like I have to really like kind of describe who they are, just so like our audience kind of knows. But for Diane, I had such a hard time because it's almost like there isn't a title she doesn't have. And because she's a producer and director, she's an interview, she's a journalist, she's a talent coach, she's a linguist, and she's solid in all of those areas. So it's not like one like incredibly stands. I imagine there are times when things shift and one thing stands out more than another, but she has something like 8 resumes. And I'm not kidding. Dr. Diane Howard, go look her up. She literally has like 8 resumes, and they are all like really solid with her experience, and just being able to talk to her was pretty great. Pretty great. Like what an honor.
Also, as a shout out to us, her website was updated with a lovely little link back to the episode with her.
Oh,
So,
nice. Oh,
yeah.
very cool. That's great to hear. And then we had some of these episodes we just loved so much we could sit and talk about them for a long time, and now we are like laboriously going through this list, and I want to make sure we hit on everybody, so I'm gonna speed it up a little. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Christina Dodd, New York Times bestselling author. You've probably seen her name before if you've looked at books at all. Never in your life. You just maybe didn't realize that you were looking at her. Anyway, yeah, Christina Dodd she was fun.
She was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah, absolutely hysterical.
Mm-hmm. I would love to have her back sometime.
Please,
She was
yes.
delightful. Yes. And she had these unexpected moments, and I was here for all of them. Then we had Sherry Bone, but I'm sorry, no, it's Bon. I say Bone because I went to high school with somebody who spells her last name the same, but you pronounce it Bohn is her last name. Bon. She's a stained glass artist with incredible talent.
Oh, that one gets a vocal just, I don't know what to say other than, uh, there are, going back and looking at some of her pieces, even the one behind her during the episode itself kept
Mm-hmm.
changing colors. And I believe it was it a chameleon?
Yeah, something like that, or a lizard.
Some sort of lizard. It kept changing colors during the episode, and I found myself just like staring at it, um, because it was so interesting, and the way that she had designed it was so that every color, like the color changing LED that was behind it, um, it was not impacted by the color of glass that she had chosen,
Oh, right.
which I thought was brilliant. And then to also find out that I think it was her son that had done the wiring for that.
Yeah, she'd worked with him on some other projects too. I forgot that detail that she had intentionally made it so it was whether the lights on inside the stained glass piece were on or not, it was impactful. And I took that to heart with like thinking about that maybe in some of my own designs, like whether or not the wow factor isn't there, does it still look cool? And she delivered. Yeah, she was incredible. And I also was pretty impressed by her just sort of like going out there and looking crazy to get I'm saying it this way, but these were her words. Looking crazy to go source some of the materials. Like she does a lot of things where she attaches stained glass to like what is it called? The wood that's it's wood that's like in a river and it's been washed over a bunch of times, so it has it's like river rocks I'm forgetting this term and it's bothering me because we're live on the air. And it's anyway, driftwood.
Oh,
Driftwood?
okay.
Driftwood.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So she would go and like source that out in the river, but she'd just go out there and just be swimming out there getting driftwood for her projects. And neighbors and other people would be watching me like, what are you doing out there? She's like, I'm swimming and I'm getting driftwood. And I love that about her, this free spirit that is Sherry Bond, was refreshing. I'm saying that word a lot, but it was true.
And then we had Ira Watson with Charlene Pod. I work with this man, and words can't express the level of creativity that he possesses. For every single episode, he has some piece of music that he has written, in addition to a story that he has written.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so touched. The first episode that I listened to from his was a story about a brother who was getting over the loss of his brother, and it was a story about like a Mickey Mouse watch, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to spoil the episode, but that was my first episode, and was sobbing by the end of it because it was so touching and beautifully written. Yeah.
There's something about Ira that I haven't been able to put into words, but he has this kind of calm brilliance to him that is understated. And I feel like if NPR doesn't pick him up somehow, it's a shame.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Or PBS. Either one. Sorry.
Either one, yes.
Yeah. Easily either one.
Please go check out charlenepod.com. And yeah, I can't say enough good things. Please go
Right?
listen.
Oh, yeah. He's amazing. And then we had Cliff and Susan.
Oh my God.
It was like everything about this.
I couldn't stop. My cheeks were hurting by the end of that episode because I was smiling so much. Um, they to watch two people who, I don't know, it is like a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll mixed together,
Mm-hmm.
quite literally in a duo. Um, yeah,
Yeah, she's touted as the Jerry Lee Lewis in a female modern form, and it's not unreasonable to say.
no, watching them play together was next level.
Mm-hmm. And just having them on the show as like a guest to chat with was also, they just fed off each other really well, and it was, every moment of that show was a fun ride.
Oh, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I think technically our next episode was a poetry reading, but our next guest, that I still need a moment of silence for, because I was okay. That sounds really horrible. I am so
It
sorry.
sounds so dark.
It does
A
sound so
moment of
dark.
silence.
Moment, moment of silence, mostly just to just reminisce about that. Gregory Maguire. I Words cannot describe how grateful I was for that conversation. For our listening audience, whenever we started talking about guests, probably about 2.5 years ago, about future guests that we wanted to have on, um, we were thinking big names. Who do we want to have on? I got a message from Emily saying, just email. Like, if you want them, here's the template for the email, send it. I sent
That
an
was
email.
back when we had a template that we just sent the same thing to everybody.
Yeah.
We don't always now, but
No.
yeah.
It is a lot more professional, but what we wanted to do, what the podcast was about, etc. Looked up Gregor Maguire, sent it to an email, thought I'm never going to get a response back. A day and a half later, I got a response back from Gregory Maguire himself saying, I would love to. I'm not sure when we can make this happen, but I would love to. It took 2.5 years, but we got him on the podcast.
It was that long. You're right. I remember getting really excited when you said he wrote back himself, and I was like, what? Also, like, if you don't know who Gregory Maguire is, he is the author of Wicked, the book, originally the book. And yeah, that's it. I mean, he wrote many other things, but that's how you might know him. And he said something really cool. He said, if you stop asking questions, you stop paying attention to your capacities. And I thought that was really thought provoking. But also, like, he had so many great things to. Excuse me 1 second. I hope that didn't end up on the show. I don't know if you heard that. Yeah, that was. I'm writing myself a note to check. Yeah, he had so many. Every moment of that show had depth to it, and it was fun. We started the episode with him eating cookies, and we ended it with some really great words, which we will get to. And then we had Jennifer Ann Gordon, who found out that we had Gregory Maguire on the show and was like, how am I supposed to follow this up? And she was so fun. I really loved having her on the show. I was like, do not worry about who you are following up, because like everybody deserves to be here. Everybody deserves to, or everybody who we have on the show, we want on the show. So it's not about better or worse. It's about featuring everybody at different levels and at different places in their artistic and in their celebration of romanticism. And so it was really lovely to have her on, to have every guest that we have on. So I feel like that's something that nobody ever needs to worry about. We've chosen each guest with purpose.
And I hope that that comes through, that we don't just want to go after the big names. We want to be celebrating art in all its forms, not
Yeah.
just the one that gets maybe more mainstream content or coverage. we want to support everybody, and we really do mean that.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Um,
That's why we don't all just go after big names, because big names aren't what makes all of this great.
no, um, unfortunately, we are running out a little bit on time, and I want to make sure that we can have a few moments to listen to some of the advice. Um, so I am going to skip ahead just a little bit here.
Well,
Um,
we
sorry.
had Jennifer Ann Gordon. We can go on to Clinton Lesh, who was the metal worker.
Yes. I was really surprised, honestly. Uh, Clinton, I had seen the work, and then meeting him, I think initially there was a little bit of some surprise. But once we got the episode going, I I love the intentionality behind everything that he did. Talking about the metal sculpture that he was making for Burning Man, and letting it be an art piece. And he was worried about people climbing on it and going on that. And at some point, he realized, no, that's kind of the intention, like for people to be on it and get notoriety from that. And so that in and of itself is a work of art, and says something. So I was really surprised.
Yeah, I like that he allowed the art to be an experience.
Yes.
And that was part of it. What people experience isn't something you have to control. You can lean into that, and it could still be amazing art. And then we had David Scott Benet, who is a violinist, a producer, and artist, and he was also amazing. Everybody's amazing. The end.
The end. Moving on.
I feel like I'm just repeating myself at this point. I was like, oh, let's go through everybody and talk about how we were affected by each one. And David had this great story about how his dad would remind him to play the violin to keep him playing, because when he was feeling low, he didn't feel like doing it anyway. And it kept him doing it anyway, and how impactful that was. And I thought about that, sometimes forcing ourselves to do something. He was able to do it because it made his dad happy more than it made him happy, and ultimately it made him happy too. And I thought about that, and how doing it anyway is sometimes very important, and actually does help us in the long run, even if we don't feel like it.
Which I think segues into our next guest, Adelie Grace Dixon. Um, for someone who was 16, I think, at the time that we interviewed her. um, I truthfully, peek behind the curtain, I walked into that conversation expecting to ask a certain set of questions and found myself asking a very different set of questions. That girl has such a head on her shoulders, knows what she wants to do. She has passion, she has drive, but then is also still so very supportive of other people. Recognizes that recognizes that what she has planned out may not be what she does for the rest of her life, but she's going to try for it anyway. And if she doesn't make that grand jeté across the floor, okay, she's going to get back up and do it again. She's going to get back up and do it again and again and again and again. Um, there are so many clipped moments from that because she spoke from the heart, and because she has such an incredible head on her shoulders. I don't want to take away anything from her and misquote her. So please go check out our social media feeds, and search specifically for Adelie Grace Dixon. There are so many quotable moments from that. I do not have time to get to all of them.
Yeah, she was a powerhouse, for sure, and wise beyond her years. Oh, and she's a dancer too, if that wasn't caught before. And then we had actor and model Bodie Jimerson, who is a Native American, and he was a lot of fun as well. Super creative. I love that he did beadwork too. It made me like, if he came out with a line of shoes or hats like what he had on the show, I would totally buy them and wear them, even though that did not fit his normal actor model career desires.
No, but still so cool. And then we had David Kersey, who is excuse me, who is also an artist and worked a lot with animation. He's done work for a few things like Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, Frozen, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Worked on one of the original programming things for specifically Tangled for the hair. The thing that I remember asking him specifically, and I loved that how he answered that question, was about for those people who may not see 3D animation as a viable art form and much prefer like 2D animation, how do you get them to see this 3D animation as a viable art form? He gave a fantastic answer. I don't want to take
Mm-hmm.
anything away, so please go watch that episode.
I got all these. Go watch the episode for all of these.
Yes, so that'll just be the tag. Go watch it.
Right. And then we had Joe Delude, the second.
I
Could not wait to say that name so that you could react.
let me just fall over in my chair now. Just
Right?
like so humble and so great. The story that he told about this piece of artwork that he had put up, he had done a professional set of photos of him put up on to the side of the building, done up really nice, flew over to the UK to go check in on the West End production of Wicked, got a call that the artwork had been ripped down by somebody, came back, had such an outcry of support, and he said, I had a choice. I could either get mad and go seek vengeance, or I could choose to do something great, and wound up turning into a space where people could come. He can open up a space for people to come and get their picture taken in New York as they were, and turned a really horrible situation into something artistically so beautiful and grew a community together. And so I really love that story.
Yep. And also, he has this great quote about hanging your own art and how he, a lot of artists don't like their own art enough to hang on the wall. And a lot of artists have that, all the things that come in between them and their art. And he overcame that by making art for himself. It's art that he liked instead of trying to please other people. And that was impactful as well. And we could talk for a long time about that episode because it was such a good one. And there's so many quotes from that one as well. But the next one was Danny Klecko, who is a New York Times multiple New York Times published poet, a master bread baker. And I think he's won awards at both poetry and bread making. And he's a lot of quirky, really interesting literary facts about him. Like he lived across the street or kitty corner to the F. Scott Fitzgerald house, things like that. Like he has some really interesting, quirky things about him. But one thing that stood out the most to me was that he really is a true like modern poet. And it's something that is appreciable. I'm missing it.
Appreciative.
Well, it's appreciable when you look at it that way. Because if you compare him to anyone else, you probably won't be able to. But if you look up Danny Klecko, Klecko on Facebook, you'll find he publishes some poetry on Facebook, but also he has some books that are out. Interesting guy. Really interesting conversation.
I would say that he's also there's a mindset that he has that I think that's also contributed to his success, and yeah, it very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting how he overcame obstacles to get where he is and what he overcame mentally, and that I think is what shows in that episode as well.
And then up next we had Elliot McConnell, which was a group duo of Angie and Chris.
Country rock singers.
Yes, I keep forgetting to say what they. I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay. I'll get you. I got you.
Thank you.
They were cool because they were like in the middle of moving and they're like sitting in a room with like a bunch of boxes and like it was not like a normal home situation for them because they're in the middle of things. And I loved how real and raw and like normal they were. That considering who they are and like how far they've come in life and just the authenticity was high with them. And I loved that about them.
And then we had Joel Robison.
And that was one of my own personal picks. When Joel said yes, I was thrilled because he's a conceptual portrait photographer who takes he kind of makes miniature worlds out of things and he puts himself in them. So he is a self-portrait photographer as well. So like he'll take a picture of him and then take a picture of mushrooms and then he puts himself like under the mushroom as an example, and it's whimsical and delightful, and it's all of his pictures are just full of joy, and I love that about it, and I feel like the world needs more of him, and it was a great conversation. I relished that one.
After that, we had Caroline Zhang and Nina Kreschke. I think I
Yeah,
really
I
butchered
Caroline.
that. I'm so sorry.
Welcome to the club, Trey. I feel like I do that every week.
These were the creators and editors of the Fine Print Art magazine.
Hmm.
This was started. This was a magazine that was started in a high school setting, and they now publish to. They published in both a physical print and then they also do a digital print version. Um, Taking this from having no fine art magazine, having no outlet for something, and then finding that intrinsic motivation with which to create something and give a space for other people to come in and be a part of that. Um, Building a new skill set of learning like a new software system and combining uh, visual medium with written medium and then finding a way to marry those and find a way just to format this into such an incredible piece of art in and of itself.
Hmm.
I want to say that Emily, you had found that when you were at a creative space, like just walking around.
I went to an art fair and there was a booth and Nina was standing there selling the magazine and I walked up and I was like, "Tell me about this." And she did. And not only is she like really good at that, like as a person, she's really good at talking about it, but also like I felt a connection to her because Modern Romantic started as a magazine and it's very similar to hers, like visually it was, and there were a lot of things that really sort of touched me about their story and how they're making publishing they're using publishing as a way to make it not just accessible to people who maybe wouldn't get to be published, but really it's about as well as about giving people a chance and showing them that they can. And am always on board with that message. So I could not wait to get them on the show. Also, the magazine is just awesome. So you should go check it out. It's called The Fine Print. And there's a really funny story about the name it could have had, which is called the F, what was it? Oh, is F Arts.
I did. I was trying to find a way not to say like it's put together.
Right.
So yes.
It was F Arts. Hmm. And then we had, oh, sorry.
Nope. Just go ahead.
And then we had Lev Grossman, who's a writer, and you might know him from the show Magicians. He wrote that book series as well as others, and that was quite an interesting chat we had with him.
Yeah, currently lives in Australia with his family.
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah, I, I'm sorry, my mind is being taken back to a lot of these conversations, and there's just so much wittiness to him. Um, I think it's ironed out by a perspective from his previous writing ventures, but again, just so much wit.
I still vote that he would be the in voted most likely to actually own a round table. Although that could be Christina Dodd as well.
Yeah, like his perspective on updating the not updating, but how to tell the Arthurian myth a little bit differently. I really appreciated his take.
Yes. And that was another PR package we got that I was so excited about because he sent us his book. And then we had Alex Osborne on as another return guest, which again, we don't do that very often, but when we do, it's usually a really great follow up episode. And this was another one that was just phenomenal.
And this was the first time that you were able to get to meet Alex.
Finally. Because when he was
Finally.
on the show the first time, it was just you. And I was a little jealous, but I think I had. Maybe that was the one I was teaching. Maybe I was teaching both times. I don't know. But either way, I was glad to finally chat with him. And that was just go listen to that episode because I can't.
I can't.
Words.
There's what I will say is it's a great discussion on this intersectionality between like finding art and indigenous space and having the space to have the conversation because it can get into some tricky territory. And I think Alex really found a way to explain from his perspective how to navigate those conversations and really find a space for everybody with which to learn. So I think he gave a lot of really wonderful insight.
Yes, for sure. Lots of quotes in that one too.
Yes. And then we had Isaac Aoki, who
Yes.
is a local ballet dancer here with Charlotte Ballet. And actually, I got to go see him dance in a show later that week, and he was incredible.
That's so great.
Was such a moving performance. Isaac, I think that was another one of those that, again, his perspective on like dance and like what it does for him as a person was really inspiring. And it was nice to hear him say like, while I enjoy classical, I also find myself drawn to the modern side of dance. And so it's that even though you can be trained in one particular venue and know that you're good at that, having your heart yearn for something else as well is also very indicative of a lot of artists.
Yeah, it's okay to be multifaceted.
100%.
And
Oh,
the
go
thing
ahead.
that struck me about him is how joyful he was. I loved that about him. He had such a demeanor about him that was just full of joy, and that I loved that about him.
Yes.
And then we had Kate Chadbourne, whose clip we played at the beginning. She is a harpist, an author, a singer, a romantic, a teacher, she's one of those with many facets, and what a delight.
I could have talked to her all day long, and I think that she would have stuck around to do so. When she says falcha, she means it. And we said it at the beginning of the episode, we'll say it again now. Truly, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm failing with words right now because of how inspiring this woman is.
Yeah, gosh.
Her perspective on music and being being the conduit for the storytelling, like that is the art. It's not about how well you sing, it's not about like hitting the notes, it's not about playing all the things correctly. It's about how do you move the story, how do you tell the story. Please go listen to that one in particular. We have so many of those from this past year, but hers in particular, I'm going to say, but just looking at the last couple, between Alex Osborne and Kate Chadbourne, please, those are some of my personal recommendations.
It's difficult because people ask us all the time, like, at least they ask me all the time. I shouldn't speak for you. Like, what's your favorite episode? Or, they'll ask questions like that. And I'm always like, all of them. But also, like, I have my favorites for different reasons. And if I were to pick an episode you should listen to first from this year, it would be Kate Chadbourne. Just first. You should still go listen to all the rest, but listen to hers first. Also, winner of the most welcoming award of all time, Kate Chadbourne.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. I mean, that I can't. We could go on the rest of the show talking about that show. So let's not. The next guest we had was Kezai Raven, whose name I always butcher, and I'm really sorry. She is our biggest fan,
I
and we are hers.
and I'm sorry to someone listening to this podcast and going, "No, I'm your biggest fan."
Yeah,
You're
no.
also our biggest
We
fan.
love you.
We love you. We support you.
Kaz for short. We call her Kaz. She is a leather worker, and she was one of our very first live audience members that stuck around forever and ever, and supported us and cheered us on, and from way back from episode 4. And so we've built a relationship with her, and so being that she is also a creator, we decided to have her on, and it was delightful. And she is really talented, and I'm glad we finally got the opportunity to do that.
After that, we had Ben Rand, which oh my god.
I feel like we could do this for all of these. We're all just like, oh, I should do a compilation of just our reactions to these names.
In our chat, the Truth Social said maybe we should make a most inspirational quote section on our website, one for each guest.
Oh.
I think that is a really interesting idea. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to like work on that quite a bit, but we could maybe make something like that happen.
But
I love it.
his working process for things, him being able to talk to us about like the structural needs of ice sculptures and then how to balance that out with the creativity. The one that still sticks out for me is the piece that he worked on with the Japanese sculptor of the tiger and the knight fighting each other.
Oh man.
But
That
also the fairy that's sitting up on that tree. Oh,
they're just incredible. Like you think you've seen ice sculpture? No.
no.
No, Ben Rand, everybody. Also, if you aren't really into ice sculpture and you're like, oh no, I'm not that interested, go listen to that episode just so you can hear how he proposed to his wife, and that's pretty romantic.
Oh. And then Emily, I'm going to let you take this next one.
We had Twan Lynch's. Twan is he's a costume maker and an embroidery artist, and he did the embroidery for the new movie Wicked. So a lot of those pieces you see that have stitching on them as embroidery, as embellishment on the clothing, he did a lot of that himself. And so that was really cool because, well, first of all, it was cool because we're into that story. I think this has kind of been a Wicked year with our guests between, of course, Gregory Maguire and Joe Dulude, and then Twan. Twan was cool because I got him all to myself, and Trey wasn't in the episode at all.
How
Because
dare you?
it was like the one. No, I'm sorry. I was sad you couldn't be there to have the great time that I had, but it was neat because also being into costuming, I found Twan to be a kindred spirit. But also it was interesting because Trey and I were actually like in the same city finally
Yes.
for the first time in like many years, and it was like the one episode we couldn't do together. And so I did it from a hotel room with a lot of help. Thank you to Josh and Trey for helping make that happen with my high anxiety regarding that. But also Twan was so cool to talk to. I mean, personally, I got a lot out of that conversation, and I was nervous. There, I said it. I was nervous for that one.
But it went so well.
Yeah, it did. He's so great. And we have to have him back on the show. We have to have all of these people back on the show.
Please.
And then we had Dennis Warner, who is the last guest of 2024. And he is a beloved folk singer in Minnesota.
going back to that episode, I was a little choked up about the way in which he told the story about how his book came into being.
Mm-hmm.
It was first a song, then got adapted into a book, and then it got picked up by, and I forget which group it was, but has been able to use that as a curriculum to go around to different schools in the Minnesota area and use it as like an anti-bullying message.
Mm-hmm.
From inspiration for a song to a book to this thing that's now for educational purposes. What yeah, what a cool dude.
Mm-hmm. It's called Beads on One String, and it's based on his song Beads on One String, which he wrote after or during maybe a trip to Africa. And he's got a music video for it. It's not new anymore, but it's still a really great story, and kind of a gracious human to have on our show.
Also, one thing I will call out, he's talked a lot about how philosophy in particular helped him with his writing and be
Mm-hmm.
very clear and go through like an iterative process, um, which I really found helpful for me because I do not speak with a lot of clarity, and I recognize that, and I tend to ramble. But for someone who I think could give inspiration to other people coming up and use that to help them be very clear and intentional, I see a lot of benefit in that.
Yeah, he was he was pretty great.
Yeah. Um,
It's hard to come up with adjectives I haven't used already,
but I think,
but
but really, we find a lot of inspiration from our guests, and I hope that's clear of how passionately we talk about them. Um,
yeah,
it's
we love them.
We do. So we may call everybody great, but we really mean it. Um,
Oh yeah, gosh. I don't think a single episode has gone by where I didn't get something amazing out of it. And that's something that we hope for our audience as well. There are such a variety of people on the show that surely someone else is getting the experience we are, right? We hope so anyway.
um,
And then we've also received quite a bit of advice from all of our guests over the years. And every episode, usually there's a piece of advice dropping somewhere in each one. And so we've picked a few, not all of them, to play for you today as clips from our shows. So I'll go ahead and start that. And here we go.
Just again, I want to give as much green light to everyone as I can. This, let's all just play with all the toys. All the colors are yours, right? Do all the things that call to you. Yeah, just let's have as much permission as we can.
Just there's a lot of great stories about famous people that just knocked on pastry chefs' doors and asked if they could, work there for a little while, and you get a feel for what it's really like, and and you might just love it. It might change your life. It did mine. It did mine.
I was a very slow learner as a writer. It wasn't. I'd been writing for 20 years before The Magicians came out, and that was my first hit. The first thing I wish somebody had said to me was, "It's all going to be okay."
Yeah.
If you think that you are a writer, if you think you're a writer, if you feel like there's something in here that belongs on a page, you're almost certainly correct. And if you keep at it long enough, it will come out.
I think, it's like anything else. You have to love the process of anything to get better at it.
Workshop, and they said, well, what are we going to make? And I said, well, that's up to you. Here are the materials. There's clay, there's tools, there's some stones and this and that and stuff. See what comes out of it. A story will come out of it. I can guarantee it. And they always do. But, it's not being afraid to play and not being afraid to try.
Mm-hmm.
It's so whether you're sewing or working with leather, or you don't know until you played with the materials, whether that resonates with you.
To see if he would like do me the honor of rejecting me. Anyway, he said yes. And so I showed up on this freestyle session, which is like one of those sessions you can only like skate on if you already have your own boots. But like I was very like new to skating. And when I got on the ice, he said, "You have as much right to be here as anyone else. Now show me your forward stroke." So then I went out there and I showed him my forward stroke, and he had notes. But it was something I really loved hearing. Like it made me feel like I wasn't an imposter. And so that's the thing that I tell myself when I walk into rooms, like right before now too. It's the I have as much right to be here as anyone else.
Like conversations like this help me be a better person, I feel like, and to think about things in a way that isn't just my own perspective. And so I think that the world could use a little bit more of that, and that's not meant to be self-serving. But just I think that like considering each other's perspectives and consent and all of those things, I think could help us have better conversations about art, romance, and really anything else that life has to offer. So.
In that moment of pressure or really wanting to make a good impression or play beautifully, things happen, and that's life. And that doesn't make me a bad musician. I think I really come back to that saying, I'm just a musician. I'm not a robot. I do make mistakes, and I hope I make beautiful mistakes.
Asking yourself who you are when you step out to get the newspaper and you sniff something on the wind, and maybe it's the salt from Boston Harbor, or maybe it's despair from the recent debate. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. You just have to ask yourself the question. If you stop asking the question, you stop paying attention to your capacities. And we're alive because we have capacities and we can still use them.
And that's what that innovation really is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lovely concept. I'm going to embrace it for the rest of this month.
Some artists can't even bring themselves to hang their own art on the wall, and I love that you can.
Yeah, it was something that it took me a while. When I stopped doing art for other people and started doing the art for myself was when it kind of changed. And then it wasn't about, I need everybody to tell me how good this is. I just have to have the reaction and love what I've done. And that's what's the most important.
A way I can show her that I just love her for everything. And not one good thing would happen to me if it wasn't for her and her endless support. You know, I can't tell you how many headshots she paid for and how many resumes she paid for and acting classes and rent she loaned me money for to just stay alive in this business. So she's the best, man. I'm a mama's boy, that's for sure.
There is a stereotype that winning means that you're the best and that competitions mean everything, when really the point of it is to portray your emotion and to get out things that you can't get out with words, and being able to, like I said, like connect with other people.
Practice. If you love it, no matter what, even if you're not a musician, if you're a woodworker, an artist, a painter, whatever, just practice your craft. Practice what you love and learn about it. Nowadays, you've got YouTube to go on and see how their techniques are done. If you're a musician, you can watch the actual fingerings of these chords that when I was a kid, you'd have to listen to in the headphones and play it over and over to try to imagine what their fingers are doing. To be good at something, you just need to put the time into it.
I would say go for it. I would say that there's never been a better time to start dancing. And that if it calls to you, that you have to just follow that call.
Strength. And I really think actually sometimes talking about your pain and what you've been through is actually far stronger than trying to bottle it up and hide it and black it out and pretend it never happened. Because actually I think if you talk about things and if you really, share them and express yourself, that's how you get past them. I don't think you ever truly get past something if you hide from it or try and hide it from the world.
So go for it.
Oh, yes. And also find your helpers, like people who you might admire. You say, oh, I love their podcast, Modern Romantic. And I would love to do something like that because they're so cool. And so, yeah, reach out. Don't be afraid to say, hey, how do you do this? How do you look so good on camera and talk to people and just look like the ultimate professionals? Go ahead and ask, and they'll tell you a little secret.
I know. I'm like,
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, find your party.
Right? Let's go make art. Go be human. But that's now the 2024 mantra. Go be human, make art.
Have fun. Have fun. Just when you don't have fun anymore, maybe it's time to relax or go bail out and try something else. That's how I see it. If you're not having fun, you're not going to do well. You're not going to, make that a priority, make that go to those trainings, go to those study or whatever you got to do. If you're not having fun, at least that's how I feel.
Do that and are committed to it. You just have to find yourself a mentor. I had two mentors, Carol Conley, the poet laureate of St. Paul, and Mike Finley, who's passed. Both these guys, one of them was a positive influence and complimented all the good things. And the poet laureate, Conley, she was quick to criticize everything I did wrong. And that's super important because all too often in the arts, people only want to hear what they're doing right. I was so grateful to have someone point out what needed improving, and because it was all said with the spirit of love and hope that I would get better. So, that's, but once again, finding confidence in yourself, because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you like the piece, it's your piece.
My dad kept encouraging me every day, just pick up your violin. Just, can you play me one song? My Ashkin Farewell, my favorite song. So I would play him that song, and that's when I was really down and low, and the violin was sad when I played. But over time, it just started to open again, and it took years. But I just haven't. They say like your instrument will never cheat on you, right? Like your music never cheats on you. So, the music is always faithful to you, but we go through ups and downs, So I think having the space to honor your own cycles and your own seasons and your own rhythms is okay.
Yeah. Have a song that is true, that you believe in. Don't try to be like somebody else.
Just do you, man.
Do you.
Do you.
The White Stripes. I'm sure they weren't trying to be like somebody else.
Yeah.
Or the Black Keys. Just be you.
And be patient, because it takes a while.
It does take a while.
One of them is empathy, and learning to listen to others, to get into the shoes of others, to be a team worker, not just be totally self-centered and narcissistic.
12 years old, I said, "Excuse me, I have a question." And I said, "How do you not get nervous when you're on stage?" And she said, "Well, before I take every stage, I stamp my feet, and then I go out and do what I was meant to do." So I tell all my students to do that as well. And before I take the stage, I just stomp my feet and I just go do it.
That maybe it's worth it. And if it's not worth it, there's no shame in that. That's when you get your backup plan. But try it without, fail a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
Fail.
Yes.
I'm in my 40s. I'm still failing. It still hurts. But then at the end of the day, you write that beautiful sentence, or somebody messages you about how much they love your work, or, your short story wins an award, and you're just like, oh, it's worth it.
Like you were saying, having joy in the work is what really makes it good. I just finished Rick Rubin's book. He's like a music producer, but he's very insightful, and he's always talking about looking for new ways to be a better artist. But anyway, he was talking about the viewer comes last in any type of artwork, and it's if you love it, then that's what matters, and don't worry about what anybody else thinks.
We are all creative. I think that we're born creative beings. As you know, I always say, like, when you're a little kid and when you get given a sheet of paper and someone's like, draw your family, you draw them in the funniest way possible, like long little legs and like 20 fingers, and like you just draw whatever, you just draw it, and it's super creative, it's super funny, and it's super you, because that's what you see the world as being. And as we grow up, we just learn to like shut those doors in our brain of like, that's not what that looks like, that's not what that looks like, that's not what that looks like, and we just end up being so uncreative and just so narrowly, you know, fixated on what reality is or what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that the biggest challenge in being an artist or wanting to create is just opening those doors back up.
Whatever it is, you know, through hard work, you just, a failure is important, I think. It's the biggest point where you'll grow is from failure. You know, you're gonna be like, this is not the way to do it. I'm gonna go the other way. You know, it challenges you.
Right.
Yeah, it challenges you to grow. I mean, you know, any adversity, you're always going to grow from it. So.
I think just do the best job you can, and if you don't know something, ask. Don't be afraid to ask, because there's still a lot I don't know, because I'm still quite new in the industry anyway, and sometimes I see people doing things, I'm like, oh, why are you doing this, or how are you doing this, or how would you do something like this? There's no problem with asking questions.
To share our stories in a more modern way and link that back to the stories that have been told for millennia.
Right.
So,
well, because one day you're going to be the ancestor.
Right. Oh, Emily. Okay, so this is a thing that I say, okay? Like, seriously, because I can't take credit for it. I don't know where it came from. But something like, it slaps you in the face that it's be a good ancestor.
And we're back. Yeah, your mic's doing something. It was cool to watch that though and go through those again, because I feel like that's it makes me want to rewatch them all, but also like some of those were the best moments from those episodes, and I loved reliving all of that.
It is difficult to put into words sometimes. Like, you go through and you do these experiences, and then seeing them compiled like that, you go, this is why I do what I do. This is it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yep. Every time. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know what I was going to say. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to repeat how grateful I am. We've had so many amazing guests over the last 3 years. It's hard to pick my favorites, and I love that that's a thing. I love that it's hard to pick my favorites because there's so many good ones, and we are blessed and lucky, and this has been amazing, and we're gonna keep going because this is what we do, and we're lucky enough now to have been picked up by Channel 14 in Central Minnesota. So now the video of our shows is on Channel 14, which is amazing. Like, I don't even know how to process that still. We've been on there for a few weeks now, and we look forward to a bigger and brighter future in whatever that looks like.
There are a couple things in the works now, potentially some other venues with which to be seen. We look forward to keep going for sure. I didn't expect to be where we are right now with the podcast, but I am so grateful that we are. I don't think we can say enough beautiful things about our wonderful producer, Sandra. I think without whom we would not have had some of the guests that we've had. She fought for us. She is truly one of our biggest advocates. So yeah, Sandra, we would not be here without you.
Yes, we love you, Sandra. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Emily, I am, kind of maybe a question for you. looking back, sorry to take you by surprise with that.
It's a live show. Everything's a surprise.
Surprise! But question for you: is there anything that you would have changed about what we did in 2024?
No. There are a few names I might have pronounced better.
Fair. Yes.
It's before every show, I get nervous anyway, and because this is my secret, ready? And I don't know if I've shared this before. If I have, I'm sorry. Before starting this podcast, I was not intending to do a podcast where we did video at all. I was not intending to do a podcast where I could be seen by anyone at any time. And so it is. We were talked into it by Joe Capone, who we dedicate every episode to. And it's not something I've ever really been 100% comfortable with. It's not something I intended. It's not something I wanted. It is something that has, but because we do the show the way we do, I'm grateful for it. And I'm just me. And it's every show I'm a little uncomfortable starting it. And every show I'm grateful I did it anyway. Not just because of me. I've grown because of it, but because I get to interact with our guests and you in a way that I couldn't if I was just a voice and a blank screen or whatever way we decided to do the show. And so there are times when I screw up, but I am really just a human. And, it was never, it's not like we have a history of broadcasting and we're like, we're coming from radio or television or anything where we were used to being perfect on live anything ever. We dove in with 0 and here we are. So I appreciate anyone who's stuck with us through all of that. And it's been a learning experience.
I think
so. How about you? Sorry.
Oh, I think it's like Tomoko said, we're making beautiful mistakes.
Mm-hmm, we are, even if it's in the form of pronouncing people's names wrong. We learn from it, though. We do, because now I've learned how various things are spoken, and so I'm hopefully we're becoming better. I am anyway.
No, we are for sure.
So how about you? Is there anything you would change?
No. Again, I'm going to take a slightly different spin on it, though. I think because of this podcast and for some of the conversations that we've had, it's made me a lot more confident, just as a person, and really pushing the boundaries of what I thought I could achieve and what I've been able to achieve has been a lot. To share a little bit of personal stuff, I was in a show. I finished the run. I bought a house. I completed personal development at work. I worked a 40-hour-a-week job. And then, in the last week and a half, I got the flu and still work through the part of that. But it goes to show that you don't know what you are capable of achieving until you're faced with that. And you can either run away from it or choose to push through it. And I think this was a year of pushing through that stuff and figuring out that I'm a lot stronger than I give myself credit for. And to quote, I have as much right to be here as anyone else. So.
Yep, to quote Yulin Kwang, whose name I said correctly.
Yes, you did. So yeah. So no, I would not have changed anything.
Excellent. The Truth Found said in the chat, Trey would have gotten a puppy. That's the one thing you would have changed?
No, honestly. Maybe in a couple of years, but not right now. It's on the list.
Huckleberry's waiting for you, so.
Oh, don't tempt me with Huckleberry.
Well, you can't have him, but you can pet him.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
Anyway, I prepared a really lovely clip from the episode with Gregory Maguire as a closing.
Okay.
So we'll play that and then we'll say goodbye.
That
sound good?
Yeah.
The musical version of your story will hit in a different way because, and he gave me some good examples. He said you Your story is filled with 19th century romantic, back to there, impulses of the big heart. The big heart. That, I think, is maybe our working definition for tonight for what is a romantic podcast, the podcast about the big heart. Most of us try to pretend it doesn't exist, but we know it does. The big.
I think that sums up our year very well.
It really does. As we close this episode out, I just want to say that I think we are finding our big heart, and I'm really grateful that you're along with us to see that journey. So thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Have a great evening, everybody.
See you in 2025.
2025.